Hey, this is Terrance from my lab. Are you looking to improve your squat mechanics or just lift more weights overall? Check out these tips in this video. So the first thing we want to do is establish a proper stance. So this is going to be dependent on your hip anatomy. So that being said, it's important you're not copying someone else's squat stance just because you see them off the internet. You want to do what's best for you. So to do this, we're going to do what's called a hip scour test. So to do this, you're just going to lay on your back. And what I'm gonna do is just slightly flex up my hip, just back and forth. And then I'm gonna come out to the side. So what you're gonna notice is there's gonna be a little pocket in which I can get the deepest with my hip, which should be where my hip is the most flexible and it allows me to get the deepest depth. So if you see when I come up here, I'm kind of getting a block. And then when I come a little bit out to the side, I can get a little bit deeper. So if I was to mirror or match with my other leg, bring that up, that should biomechanically be the best stance for my squat. Alternatively, another test we can do is just from the hands and knees, we get in a quadruped position. So from here, I'm gonna do essentially the same thing. I'm gonna get a little brace with my stomach and sit back. So you can probably see here my back is starting to round. So what I'm gonna try to do is find a stance in which I can keep my back the flattest and get the deepest in my hips. So I'm gonna sit back and this should roughly be my stance. If I stand up from this position, that should roughly be my squat stance. Again, you can make little adjustments, but that's roughly where we wanna put it. The second thing we're going to establish is good position and engagement with our foot. So what we want to make sure we're not doing is just bunching up our foot, which doesn't give us a good base to push from. What we want to do is establish what's called a tripod foot, which is when we get pressure underneath the knuckle of our big toe, little toe, and heel, which kind of makes this tripod. So to do that, what we're going to do is really push that base of the first toe down, push the base of the fifth toe down, and then also your heel. So when I do that, that's gonna create this little arch through the inside of my foot, which gives me a stable platform to push from. So when I do that from a squat position, it's gonna be here, push down, heel. From there, I'm gonna do what's called rooting my foot into the ground. So once I get that tripod foot, I'm gonna torque my hip out a little bit, which gets my glute engaged and puts my knee in a really good position so I can engage my whole chain properly. The next thing we're going to establish is proper positioning of our core and our pelvis. So we start that off by assessing the breath. So what we do for this is essentially we just put our hands up on our collarbones. We have you take a big breath and then out. So a lot of the time what we'll see when people do this test is when they breathe in, they're gonna breathe up through their upper back, which you can see that's gonna extend my low back and that creates a lot of pressure. The other thing that does is it separates my rib cage and my pelvis. So when I get in a position like this, like I said, it A, puts a lot of pressure in your low back, but then B, it makes your core really hard to engage because those surfaces are separated. So if you kind of think of it like a pop can, we want to keep the pelvis and the rib cage in line with each other. So a cue for this is drawing your sternum down toward your ribs, just like this. And if you're having trouble with the breathing, what you're going to do is when you take a big breath, you're going to get some pressure into the side of the abdomen. And then I'm just going to breathe into my fingers. So breathe, fill up my fingers, and then that should be where I establish my core pressure from. The last cue is where we set our hands and wrists when we're grabbing the barbell. So what we're going to do is grab roughly about shoulder width, or if you were to do a lat pull down, that's kind of where you want to establish your grip. So I'm going to get underneath the barbell and just set my upper back. So with this allows me to be really tight and pull down my lats into the bar. If I'm not in that position, what happens is I'll break my wrist backward, which then pushes me forward. So if I get in a position where I get underneath the barbell and I get my wrists back, first off, this is hard for me to pull down and engage my lats. The other thing this does is puts a lot of pressure on my wrist. And then also it's going to shove me forward, which makes it tough to stay upright. So like I said, you want to get a grip where you can kind of keep your wrist as neutral as possible so that I can squeeze and pull the barbell down and engage my back as well with this exercise. So here, get underneath, set, wrist stay straight, pull down, I'm squeezing my lats, and then I'm set. So in summary, we want to get that tripod foot. We want to root the foot into the ground. We want to establish a good core brace, so just bracing down. And then we want to set our back angle so that we have a good wrist position. So give that a try. Thanks for watching.